station. The footage you're seeing
Okay,
in
six
January 2015, a group
most disturbing forest encounters caught on camera.
New Zealand film students were recording outside their school at Auckland's Parnell railway station. The footage you're seeing now was recorded by a student named Chris Muir. For a few minutes, Chris and his friends were messing around and having fun as they filmed. But that's when the group spotted a man and a woman wearing creepy white masks hiding in the tall grass next to the station and staring ominously at the camera.
Bro, this is literally a scene out of
As it
The
was later
Strangers.
revealed, Chris and his
Like, look at
buddies
these
first
people.
thought that the masked people were probably pranksters from the school trying to creep them out, which is why they can be heard laughing throughout the footage. However, the students later confessed that it was more so nervous laughter and that they were actually pretty terrified during the encounter. Disturbingly, looking at the footage, they noticed that the couple appeared to be armed. In some of the clips, it looks like one of them is holding a pistol.
Where's the other one?
Got a little too close for comfort, the group ran back to the main road, after which they reportedly saw a police chopper approaching the area of the incident. It's not entirely clear who called the cops that day, but based on my research, this wasn't the first time the couple
What's a
had harassed
grown-ass
the public
woman?
with their creepy masks and weapons. Earlier that week, they had terrorized a woman at Auckland's Domain Park, but left before the police were able to arrest them. When the cops arrived at the train station, Chris and his friends gave them the report, after which the Auckland Police Department uploaded a Facebook post where they urged the suspects to come forward and warned civilians to stay far away from the masked couple if they saw them. They also cautioned that if they saw someone carrying what appeared to be a weapon, they had no way of knowing if the weapon was real or fake.
They just
and would be
dropped the
forced
whole
to approach
detective's
the
phone number on
situation
there
as
and
if it
kept
were
it.
real. Shortly after that, the suspects reportedly came forward to talk to the cops. Throughout the investigation, the authorities didn't release a whole lot of information to the public about who these people were, whether their weapons were real, or what their intentions were. But one thing we know for sure is that this wasn't just an innocent prank. In fact, when a lot of people online started accusing the students of staging a prank just to get attention, a spokesperson from the school came forward to clarify that the masked suspects had nothing to do with the institute. According to an article from Vice, a police spokesperson later confirmed that the weapons were fake. But I wasn't able to find
Bro,
any
I would've
official
ran away as soon as
confirmation
she's
of
staring
this,
at me
and
like
to this
that, bro.
day,
Like,
not a
fuck
lot of
that,
people
I'm
know who the
gone.
suspects were or why they were terrorizing the public for no reason. Whatever the case, it's a good thing Chris and his friends were able to get away before things took a turn for the worse. Near the base of Mount Fuji in Japan lies a forest that's known among the locals as the Sea of Trees. Interestingly, the entire forest grew out of a 30 square kilometer patch of hardened lava that was laid down by the last major eruption of Mount Fuji. A little more disturbingly though, over the years the Sea of Trees has become known as a place where people go to take their own lives. And if you venture far enough into the forest, it's not uncommon at all to find a body. Near the entrance of the forest, a sign written in Japanese reads, "Quietly think once more about your parents, siblings, and children. Please don't suffer alone, and first reach out." In July 2017, urban explorer and YouTuber Burbax ventured into the forest to see what he'd find, walking his viewers through his entire journey into the Sea of Trees. But even though the video starts out tame enough, just a few minutes into his exploration, the uploader comes across an abandoned bike, and that's when things get a little disturbing.
I'm only a few meters away from the road right now, but I've already found an abandoned bike. It's actually a pretty nice bike. Let's take a look at it.
Should I take that?
I don't think it's been here a long time. What have we got in here? And there's a packet for a knife. I think I've just found some kind of note in a bag. It says 1211. I can't quite make out. I think this is somebody's name just here, and I'm not sure what this means.
On top of the bike, Burbax finds an empty piece of packaging for a kitchen knife, and a few minutes later, he comes across a note written on a plastic bag. The note translates to 1211 verified, Fuji Yoshida police station verified, meaning it's likely evidence of someone who abandoned their stuff to take their own life in the forest, confirmed by the local police station.
Just
It's
leave it all there.
incredibly haunting to think how many lives have been lost in that forest over the years, and even more disturbing to think that any random passerby could easily find the body while exploring the terrain. Over the years, the Japanese government has implemented several measures, such as placing security cameras near the entrance to track those who walk inside, as well as training volunteers to talk to the visitors who are thinking of taking their lives. Still, this hasn't stopped people from following through with it, and the fact that the media has really played a big part in sensationalizing the forest in recent years hasn't helped either. In early 2023, a man named David Meredith was taking his usual evening stroll through his neighborhood in Red Deer, Canada, when he suddenly saw a bull moose eating next to a tree. Hoping to catch a better glimpse, he hid behind the tree to watch. And that's when the moose turned around and started charging at him. To understand how incredibly dangerous this is, keep in mind that an adult male moose can run faster than 35 miles per hour, which is almost twice as fast as the max speed for the average human male.
That's insane.
Even though moose aren't generally aggressive, they can easily trample and kill a human if they feel threatened, which is probably what happened here. Fearing for his life, David hoisted himself up the tree next to him to avoid getting stabbed by the moose's antlers.
He just ran me up a tree.
Over, bruh. He wants to.
As soon as he was out of the moose's reach, he started recording. For about 30 seconds, the moose just stares at David, and you can hear the uploader's nervous breathing as he waits for the moose to leave. But shortly after, the moose starts charging back and forth with its head down, which is a clear sign that it's stressed and would probably trample David if he were to come down or fall from the tree.
Yeah, fuck that, dude. He's growling. I'd set up base
Based on
there,
being
bro.
mentioned
Never
to
come
the news
down.
station that interviewed him a couple of days later, David stayed in the tree for over 10 minutes waiting for the moose to leave him alone. When asked how he climbed up the tree, he demonstrated how he pulled himself up by a flimsy-looking branch, which is honestly
It just
one of the
snaps
most
on
concerning parts of
they're
this whole
recording him.
situation. That branch breaks, and David would have been at the mercy of a very angry moose and might not have lived to tell the tale. Luckily, after seeing that David wasn't coming down, the moose finally gave up.
I never knew it was that dangerous. I wonder how many they kill a year. Or how many people they kill.
Ran off, thanks to which the uploader was able to come down safely after waiting it out for around an extra half hour.
Look, he starts chasing someone right there. What the fuck?
In fact, for around an extra half hour.
What is this? He's running after someone now. He's just on dirt. He's a dickhead.
In
Damn.
February 2018, a man named Greg Harris uploaded a GoPro video of himself riding his ATV on an unnamed trail. For the first few seconds, the footage shows pretty much exactly what you'd expect from this kind of upload. But in the blink of an eye, something extremely disturbing interrupts Greg's ATV ride.
What happened? Oh, he got clotheslined? Wow, he was going
If you
fast.
didn't catch it, someone had set up a metal wire between the two trees, which got caught in the uploader's helmet and forced him to stop.
Wow.
It's pretty disturbing to think that if Greg hadn't been so lucky, he could have been decapitated by the wire. Fortunately, as mentioned in the video description, his speed, along with the wire hitting his helmet instead of his neck, caused it to break as he passed through it. It might seem shocking that anyone would even think of doing something as incredibly evil as setting up a lethal booby trap in the middle of an
Damn,
ATV
I thought he was
trail,
running into a
but
bear or
sadly,
something.
It's actually pretty common in the dirt bike and ATV community.
What?
Sometimes these wires are set up by people trying to keep bikers off their property. Others are set up by psychos who get irritated by the noise and decide to use violence to fix the issue. And the rest are set up by people who are just messed up in the head and want to bring harm to others for no reason. In this case, it's impossible to tell who was responsible for setting up the trap. This is just one of those videos where if the wire was set up just slightly lower, the accident could have easily been fatal. Luckily, he was able to walk away with minimal injuries, and he used his video as a way to warn others to watch out for these kinds of traps, especially when riding through trees.
dirt bikes through a forest, bro.
Back in the
Fuck
summer of
that.
2014, a man named Chris was biking in the mountains near Fernie, British Columbia, when he suddenly noticed what appeared to be an animal approaching him in the tall grass. Immediately, he realized it was a mountain lion. And
Oh,
that's when he
nah.
started recording.
Why? Run.
Can't see it, but there's a mountain lion. He's crouching in the grass. He's actually coming towards me.
Run.
At first, it's kind of hard to see where exactly the animal is, but as Chris
Oh,
walks
I
towards the
see it,
trail,
yeah,
you
right
can see it
here.
emerging from the grass coming closer.
He's just right there.
That is a mountain lion. And he's stalking me.
Even though mountain lion sightings are rare, they have been known to attack people in certain situations. And let's just say, if you see one stalking you in the tall grass, slowly approaching as it stares you down, you can be pretty certain that you're in danger. About 2 minutes into the footage, the lion starts walking a little faster, and Chris does the one thing you never do with a mountain lion by turning his back and starting to run.
I would have been dead. I would have definitely been running, folk. Hit his ass with a rock.
Hey, Mr. Mountain Lion. How are you
Sweet
doing?
talk.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you. I am much bigger than you.
Scream at his ass.
Over the next couple of minutes, Chris tries to get the animal to go away, but it only walks around him and continues to stalk him, staring him down in the tall grass near the entrance to the woods. A couple of minutes later, the uploader manages to take a few steps toward the main trail back to his car, but he doesn't get too far before the mountain lion cuts him off again.
Damn.
Stay back. Stay there.
Throw something. He's scared. Run at him.
I'm not afraid of you.
Fortunately, after a few moments of tension, the mountain lion turns around and disappears into the trees. Being in a position like that has to be downright terrifying, especially when you consider that the only reason the lion didn't attack was because it didn't want to. And had it felt more threatened, it easily could have done some serious damage. Thankfully, it was just a close call, and Chris was able to walk away from the terrifying encounter unharmed. In March 2019, a 5-year-old girl from Fairlawn, New Jersey was playing with her friends near a creek in a wooded area behind their home right off Route 208. This was an area the family knew very well, as they'd been living there for 13 years, and the girl's father, Dave Kuroda, and his wife felt completely safe letting their kid play in the woods behind their house. But at some point during that particular afternoon, the girl came across a pile of clothing in the woods, after which she immediately ran back to tell her dad what she had found. Strangely, the clothes appeared to have been cut off a person's body, and there were suspicious red stains all over the tattered, shredded outfit. After confirming the bundle consisted only of women's clothing, Dave called the Bergen County Sheriff's Office and reported the incident, feeling like it was just too out of the ordinary for a random pile of cut-up clothes to appear near the entrance of the woods so close to his home. Even though this was the first time their daughter saw the clothes, it appeared they had been in the woods for several months, which explains some of the excessive wear and tear, but not the suspicious cuts and stains all over the outfit. Immediately, Fairlawn police started asking the public if they could identify the clothes, hoping that it was just a prank rather than something more sinister. Unfortunately, nobody came forward, and until the clothes can be linked to some sort of crime
there's
or to
blood
a
on it,
victim,
looks
they
like.
can't be accepted for testing by the police department. To this day, the cops from the Fairlawn Police Department haven't been able to match the clothing to anyone in particular. And at this point, all we can do is hope that whoever those clothes belonged to did not come to the harrowing fate that the dark reddish stains imply.
Damn.
On the 30th of June 2025, a reporter named Linildo Frazão went live from the Miriam River in Brazil to cover a tragic incident that happened there just a day earlier. In the early hours of June 29, a group of teenagers had decided to go for a swim in the river. Unfortunately, they
dirty-ass
underestimated
river.
its depth, resulting in the disappearance of 13-year-old Raíssa Fernandes. Seconds after entering the water, her friends watched her dip beneath the surface, and that was the last time anyone saw her alive. Divers looked for her underwater, while rescuers scoured the riverbank, hoping she might have washed ashore somewhere. But even after hours of searching, Raisa was nowhere to be found. Lineal Do intended to use this broadcast as an opportunity to educate viewers on the dangers of river currents and general river safety, not knowing that he was about to solve the mystery of
He in the water with the microphone?
live TV.
What he doing?
He took off his shoes and started slowly walking into the river while talking about the sudden increase in depth and how dangerous it can be for inexperienced swimmers.
Quanto mais você desce, mais fundo fica. Ó, aqui, ó. Até que aqui é de boa, mas só que é uma descida. Aqui onde ela se afogou, gente, é uma descida. Pra você ver aqui, ó, o tanto que eu passei aqui, daqui dá mais ou menos uns 2,5 metros. Ó, e quanto mais você anda, ó a diferença aqui já onde eu estou agora, ó. Então, pessoal, e ainda tem a correnteza. Aqui já, olha, ó, um passinho para frente, a água já tá praticamente me cobrindo. Então, o risco aqui é muito.
Why do you keep on going in? We're gonna be
Nothing
underwater.
could have prepared him for what he was about to encounter just seconds later.
Ó a fundura aqui, ó.
Like, bro, chill.
Eu acho que tinha um negócio aqui no fundo da água.
Oh, did
No,
he find the
no.
body?
Será que não é ela, não?
While trying to demonstrate the river's deceptive drop-off, Lineal Do accidentally stepped on something lying on the river. It was too
Yo.
soft and organic feeling to be a rock or a submerged log, which caught him off guard. The murky water made it impossible to see beneath the surface. But Lineal Do was starting to realize what it could be, leaving him too disturbed to go back and investigate further. He got out of the water and contacted authorities immediately. And it wasn't long before divers recovered the remains of Raisa from the exact
Wow.
spot. Later autopsy report confirmed that there was no foul play involved. What happened to her was nothing more than a tragic accident. On September 25, 2025, the CBS 6 station in Albany, New York received a strange email with a 2-page document. It contained a nearly incomprehensible rant featuring Arnold Schwarzenegger, archaic centuries-old laws, and a proposal to create a board of trustees with prosecutorial immunity. However, the most important aspect of this document wasn't its content. Instead, the reason it stood out among the hundreds of emails the channel received every day was its author, 53-year-old Lawrence Krauss, who also
Who's
put a
mans?
selfie alongside the document. You see, Lawrence was currently under investigation for ending the lives of his own parents and getting away with it for over 8 years. It happened in August 2017. His 86-year-old father and 83-year-old mother were living out their retirement in their home in Crestwood Court in Albany, New York. And suddenly they were gone without a trace. None of the neighbors saw them leaving or heard anything about where they were going. Their house was also left abandoned, with Lawrence only visiting it occasionally to collect mail, mow the lawn, and clear the snow. When asked about his parents, he claimed that they had moved back to Germany and won't be coming back. The neighbors had no reason to distrust Lawrence, so no one questioned their absence and life went on as usual. A distant relative even requested a welfare check in 2020. But the neighbors repeated the same explanation Lawrence had given, ending the officer's questioning without any further suspicion. It wasn't until mid-2025 that the Albany police became aware of something shady going on with the Krauss family. Someone had been collecting Lawrence's parents' social security payments, even though the two hadn't been seen in years. This resulted in the police launching a formal investigation, and after months, finally executing a search warrant at the Krauss home on September 23rd. Over the next 48 hours, detectives collected thousands of financial documents and other evidence. More importantly, they discovered the remains of Lawrence's parents buried in the backyard. Lawrence likely knew
The
that he
neighbors
was the
didn't
prime
see that?
suspect in this case, but instead of turning himself in or trying to run away, he made the unusual decision of sending this document to the local news network alongside his contact information. One of the directors at CBS 6 was familiar with the Krauss case and immediately jumped at the opportunity to interview Lawrence. After giving him a call, Lawrence claimed that he was willing to do a live interview.
Why
with
is
the
bro
channel.
built like a rooster, dude? Like, look at this shit.
They published his document on the internet for everyone to see. The network agreed, and less than an hour later, Lawrence was sitting with a CBS 6 reporter for a live interview. Lawrence was a bit hesitant at first, but after some pressure, he cracked.
Wait, this is the dude who killed the parents? Why is he just sitting there smiling and laughing and shit?
To everything.
I want to hear from you.
Yeah.
What did you do to your parents?
I buried them in their property.
You buried them in the backyard. of that house in Albany.
Right.
When it actually happened, when your parents died, did they know it was happening to them?
Oh, yeah.
And they knew it was at your hand?
Well, yes, no one else's.
Right. So they realized what you were doing to
So
them
calm.
as it happened.
Yes,
They knew that this was it for them, that they were perishing at your hand.
yes. And it was so quick.
How did you do it?
Yeah, I can't talk about that.
Well, you've just told us that
Right.
it was at your hand.
Right.
Were there drugs involved? Was
No.
there a suffocation? You suffocated them? You suffocated your parents?
Yeah.
What made this confession so disturbing, however, was the way Lorenz tried to portray it as something righteous. His argument essentially boiled down to, my parents were suffering from old age, so I did them a favor. Even though the neighbors described the couple as elderly, they were by no means sick or bedridden. They had normal routines where they tended to their garden, shared mint leaves with neighbors' kids, and listened to Polish music every day. Their lives weren't nearly as miserable as Lorenz tried to portray during this interview. Now, it's unclear if he's severely mentally ill and genuinely believed everything he was saying, or if this interview was his way of trying to paint himself as the concerned son to earn the public's favor before his inevitable arrest. In either case, he had no way of escaping the consequences of his heartless actions. He was arrested immediately after walking out of the network.
Right, he thought he was gonna leave all sweet and shit.
For the death of his parents.
Nope.
On the night of October 28, 2023, the Utilita Arena in Sheffield, England was packed with over 8,000 spectators. They were there to watch the ice hockey match between the Nottingham Panthers and the Sheffield Steelers. The whole thing was also being broadcast live on TV for fans across the world, and the match started off completely normal. The first period ended without either team scoring a point. About 35 minutes later, the score was 4-2 in favor of the Sheffield Steelers. The Panthers needed to score soon if they wanted to make a comeback. So, one of their more renowned players, Adam Johnson, got a hold of the puck and started pushing into the Steelers' defensive zone. But before he could reach the goal, the match got interrupted by one of the most tragic incidents in ice hockey history. As Adam was making his way to the goal, a different player of his team bumped into Matt Petgrave of the Steelers. This resulted in Matt getting launched in the air and slicing Adam's neck with one of his skates. For those who don't know, professional hockey skates are sharpened to a razor's edge. So it took very little force to leave a deep laceration across Adam's neck, causing him to bleed profusely in front of both the live crowd and the TV audience. Medics at the arena tried to stop the bleeding, but the cut was too deep. He had already lost a lot of blood on the ice. Adam was then rushed to a nearby hospital. Unfortunately, despite going into surgery as quickly as possible, Adam couldn't survive the injury and passed away just hours later. Matt was arrested shortly after on suspicion that he had cut Adam on purpose. However, investigators found no foul play in Adam's death and ultimately ruled it a tragic accident. The only silver lining in this entire case is that it resulted in the English Ice Hockey Association making neck guards mandatory for all players, something that would have likely prevented this from happening altogether. But at the time, wearing this protective gear was only a suggestion.
Damn.
On September 2, 2011, TVN, one of the biggest networks in Chile, was airing the latest episode of a show called Calle
Bro, this look like Josh
It was a live
Peck.
game show where teams competed in various challenges to make their way to the top, and this weekend's episode was supposed to be no different. But things took a disturbing turn about halfway through the episode when the show's host interrupted the competitors seemingly out of nowhere and told them to stop.
Quiero que paren la competencia. Quiero que paren la competencia, por favor. Nos acaba de llegar una información muy difícil de entregar. No habíamos querido decir nada antes de chequear bien lo que estaba sucediendo porque compromete a personajes del canal, a personas muy queridas, a un equipo del canal, entre ellos Felipe Camiroaga y Bruce, Roberto Bruce, que también estaba en aquel vuelo a la isla de Juan Fernández, según tengo entendido. Es información que nos está llegando en este momento. El Ministerio de Defensa informó esta tarde el presidente de la República que un equipo de TVN iba al borde de una nave de la Fuerza Aérea de Chile que capotó en el archipiélago de Juan Fernández.
However, the reason for this interruption
A
had
plane
nothing to
crash?
do with the show itself. The host was talking about the C-212 Chilean Air Force plane that departed from the Arturo Merino Benitez International Airport earlier that day at around 2 p.m. It was headed for the Robinson Crusoe Airport, located hundreds of miles off the coast of Chile. Aboard was a full TV crew from the network, including the two renowned presenters, Felipe Camiroaga and Roberto Bruce. They were visiting Robinson Crusoe Island to report on the reconstruction after the 2010 earthquake. The flight started without a hitch. Unfortunately, as they were approaching the runway, the wind became extremely strong, making it impossible to land. The pilot tried to land a couple of times, circling in the air after each attempt. However, on the third attempt, witnesses saw the plane lose altitude much faster than expected and crash into the ocean just a mile from the island. By the time rescuers reached the crash site, it was already too late. All 21 people aboard the C-212 plane had passed away. But while investigators initially believed that all of those deaths were due to the impact of the crash, the reality turned out to be far darker. As they were searching the wreckage, they found footage that one of the cameramen took of the interior shortly before the crash. The footage showed the passengers strapped into their seats, completely unaware of their fate. But the more haunting discovery happened when investigators found an SD card inside an empty water bottle floating near the crash site. This card contained hundreds of images. However, analysis of these images showed that 2 of them were taken after the crash, including one of the plane's windows covered in water. These images put the crash into a whole new perspective. They showed that several passengers, including the cameraman who took these photos and preserved the SD card in the bottle, likely survived the initial crash. Sadly, they were trapped inside a rapidly sinking plane with no way out, forced to watch their aircraft fill up with water until there was no air left to breathe. Niagara Falls is widely regarded as one of the world's most breathtaking natural wonders. However, while the surface is undeniably beautiful, the depths beneath the falls hide the disturbing history of many who lost their lives to the currents. One such incident was captured live on TV on May 30, 1985, when reporter Phil Kavitz was hosting a section about real estate in front of the falls. Suddenly, in the background, the camera captured a man caught in the current behind Phil. The rushing water carried him to the edge of the falls before throwing him over the 170-foot drop.
Wow, I don't know, was that
few
big?
have survived the fall from the Niagara Falls, he wasn't one of them. The treacherous terrain under the falls also made it difficult to retrieve his remains. Once recovered, investigators identified the man as 56-year-old Robert Arens and concluded that the act was deliberate. However, Robert was only one of the 5,000 bodies that have been recovered from the foot of the falls in the last 175 years. Many of these 5,000 deaths were intentional, but there were a lot that weren't. And unfortunately, surviving a fall from Niagara Falls is near impossible. Once you fall in, the cold water makes it extremely difficult to breathe, making it even more challenging to swim to the surface. The water near the edge can also move at over 60 miles per hour, adding another layer of difficulty to an already impossible challenge. But the jagged rocks at the base of the falls is what marks the end for most people. On the 23rd of August 2010 at around 10 a.m., 21 tourists from Hong Kong returned to their tour bus after visiting the historic Fort Santiago in Manila, Philippines. They were also accompanied by 3 Filipino tour guides, and the trip had been going fantastic so far. But just as they were about to set out to the next location, they got interrupted by a middle-aged man in a police uniform. He was openly carrying multiple firearms, and his demeanor made it clear he wasn't afraid to use them either, something that became even more apparent as time went on. For now, things started off fairly calm, with him asking the driver for a ride to the next station. The bus driver tried to reject the request respectfully, explaining that he couldn't let him on because it was a private vehicle, not a public bus. However, the man wasn't having any of it. As soon as the bus driver rejected his request, he equipped one of his firearms and claimed that he was taking the bus hostage. This was 55-year-old Rolando Mendoza, a police officer with nearly 30 years of service. But he'd recently been fired over drug charges that Rolando claimed were untrue. Getting fired left him with no pension after 3 decades of hard work. And while he tried to fight for his job through official means, his superiors wouldn't listen. In an act of desperation and defiance, Rolando took this bus full of tourists hostage and presented a single demand: he wanted his job back. The situation so far looked fairly manageable, with 2 of his former colleagues establishing communications without any pushback. They were even able to convince him to release a few of the hostages. Granting his relatively simple demand would have been easy. But what followed was one of the biggest hostage disasters in the country's history, all because those in charge couldn't agree on the next move. Things started going downhill when Rolando's brother tried to approach the bus and was immediately detained by the officers. This made the already furious Rolando even angrier and more unstable. The situation only got worse once the media got involved. Nearly every news channel in the country started broadcasting the situation live. They talked about everything, including the plans officials were making outside. What they didn't know, however, was that the bus had a working TV and Rolando was watching and listening in on everything. This could have helped him formulate a plan and get what he wanted without hurting anyone. Unfortunately, the lackluster response from the officials made a peaceful resolution near impossible. His anger reached a boiling point when he saw how his brother was being treated by the police on live TV. This resulted in Rolando getting blinded by rage and opening fire on the hostages. Around the same time, the bus driver managed to free himself from the handcuffs Rolando put him in and escape through the driver's side door. Unfortunately, while he was able to remain unharmed, other hostages weren't as lucky, since, according to the bus driver, they were all dead, leaving Rolando alone in the bus. This revelation gave authorities the go-ahead to surround the bus and try to break in without any more casualties. But Rolando wasn't willing to go down without a fight. As soon as they tried to enter through the emergency exit, Rolando opened fire, hitting one officer on his bulletproof helmet and barely missing the others. So the officers thought of a different strategy. They flooded the back of the bus with tear gas, forcing him to the front, right into the crosshairs of a sniper, finally ending the hostage crisis. It wasn't until after his death that police realized the bus driver had misunderstood the situation and that 9 of the hostages were still alive. The massive loss of innocent lives broadcast live for the world to see, coupled with officials making wrong decisions at every turn, drew intense global scrutiny, marking this as one of the worst and most tragic incidents in Filipino history.
So everyone was still alive on there?